Hey, all good TV has some love triangle action.
Yeah.
I think.
Holy guac, that is boom!
Welcome to Visibility Clinic, where never more students go to med school. For our introductions and audio description, check out part 1 of our breakdown, link in the description. Let's take a stab at breaking down more scenes from Netflix's Wednesday.
So next up, we get to see a little bit more Mean Girls kind of rivalry. I think I have pulled up this fencing scene.
Coach, you tripped me.
It was a clean strike, Rowan.
Maybe if you whined less and practiced more, you wouldn't suck. Seriously, Coach, when am I going to get some real competition? Anyone else want to challenge me?
I do.
Bianca's pale eyes fall on Wednesday.
Oh, you must be the psychopath they let in.
And you must be the self-appointed queen bee. Interesting thing about bees. Pull out their stingers and they drop dead.
A lot of people see Bianca as like this mean girl, but I don't know why. I don't really see her that way. I like them both. They both come off as like very strong, women. Instead of seeing like a girl that needs rescuing, there's these two tough girls, fighting boys and winning. So I kind of like that.
She feels superior, she feels competitive, but because she clearly is skilled, so she's kind of earned that pride.
Yeah, and when guys do it, like nobody thinks anything of it, but when girls do it, it's like automatically like they're just mean, and I'm like, I think she's just competitive right now. But I don't know. I have issues with social cues and stuff, so maybe she is.
I saw this scene and immediately I thought of the vegetable test, because if you really think about Bianca and Wednesday, they are both their conflict really stems from the artist, the guy. Bianca is his ex. He's interested in Wednesday. It's like this really weird love triangle thingy-ish going on. Just like what you said, Syanne, especially if you look later in the episode, Bianca is also having some issues with her mom, being forced to make a decision whether to put herself first or to go back to her controlling mother. So it's like I could empathize so much with her, and I'm like, she's not the bad character here.
When Bianca calls Wednesday a psycho, that's been understood as like that's a slur, like that's offensive, that's not humanizing of people who actually have like psychiatric issues. But then of course it's used so casually all the time in song lyrics and in regular conversation, like we're kind of desensitized to it.
You will see people throw around these expressions like she's crazy. That is not okay, and that's actually very interesting, because if Nevermore is a school that's focused on making those who are marginalized in society, you would think that there would be a better understanding, much more inclusive language. Even those people that are marginalized will then figure out other hierarchies within those marginalized groups to differentiate each other. So that was a phenomenal point, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you.
This is a safe space, Wednesday. A sanctuary where we can discuss anything. What you're thinking, feeling, your views on the world, personal philosophy.
That's easy. I think that this is a waste of time. I see the world as a place that must be endured, and my personal philosophy is kill or be killed.
So, for instance, when someone bullies your brother, your response is to dump piranha in the pool.
You know the old saying, never bring a knife to a sword fight. Unless it's concealed.
A part of this journey requires us going to uncomfortable places emotionally.
I don't travel well. Would you mind if I use the powder room first?
Kimbot gestures. Wearing her satchel on her back, Wednesday steps into a nearby bathroom. She scans the bathroom. Her satchel knocks over a candle.
Wednesday? Is everything okay? You can't hide in there for the rest of the session.
I'm all right. Just preparing myself for our uncomfortable journey.
She taps her satchel.
Nail file.
Thing hands her a file. She steps out onto the first floor roof.
Honestly, I'm sorry I keep bringing up that I find it relatable, but I was...
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. That's why I invited you to talk. I think you should really share a lot of what you're feeling.
I was in and out of therapy, in and out of mental hospitals when I was a kid. That therapist just gives the vibe of I feel like the stereotypical therapist who kind of acts like they care about you, but you don't really believe them, and they don't, and they try to understand you, but there's no way that they could. She was escaping from the therapy session. And I'm like, well, there's been many times when I wish I could have just gotten up and left.
I think it's very hard. This scene is just exploring how people generally feel, how mainstream society generally feels about therapy in general, about medical attention, about seeking help, about recognizing that those things in our lived experience that we see as normal, sometimes it takes an outsider perspective to help us understand just a little bit better, and how very often we are very resistant to having that help or having that support.
I think for anyone, regardless of their neurodivergent status, it's really uncomfortable and challenging to confront something that is problematic about us. Like if we misbehaved, or if we hurt someone, or if we're going through something hard with our parents or a loved one, you know, that's tough to unpack at the best of times. On a wider level, like what Mariella is saying, like the cultural feeling about therapy is that it's like icky and uncomfortable and sterile. And it reflects this need of like, how do we make therapy more accessible to anyone who might really benefit from it? Because we're recognizing that there's value in trying to process our emotions. It's just a lot to unpack in that one little scene. I think there's a lot there. Now, speaking of sort of feeling mistreated and hurting people.
3 young men dressed as pilgrims approach from outside.
What's a nevermore freak doing out in the wild? This is our booth.
Why are you 3 dressed like religious fanatics?
We're pilgrims.
Potato, potato.
We work at Pilgrim World.
A young black man slides over a flyer for Pilgrim World.
It takes a special kind of stupid to devote an entire theme park to zealots responsible for mass genocide.
Who you calling stupid?
If the buckled shoe fits.
Tyler.
Guys, back off. Stay out of this, Galpin.
Yes, stay out of this.
She stands to face the young black pilgrim, Lucas.
So tell me, freak, you ever been with an army?
I've never found one that could handle me.
Lucas flinches. A second white pilgrim grabs her. She knees him in the crotch and swings him into Lucas, knocking Lucas down. She kicks the second pilgrim in the face, toppling him. She dodges punches from the third pilgrim and drops him with a spinning kick. Tyler cautiously approaches.
So where do you learn those kung fu moves?
My uncle taught me. He spent 5 years in a Tibetan monastery.
Was he a monk?
Prisoner.
Yeah.
The sheriff steps into the cafe.
Tyler, what the hell's going on in here?
They were harassing a customer and she put them in their place.
Sheriff Galpin eyes Wednesday.
This little thing took down 3 boys? Did you help her?
That, I swear, wasn't involved.
Weems enters.
Apologies, Sheriff. This one slipped away from me.
I have multiple thoughts on this one. So first, the way that the boys introduce themselves, their first interaction is calling her a freak. It goes into a sexualized conversation of, have you ever been with a normie? Like, what? And then the very last scene is the apologizing for assisting. The blame fell on Wednesday with no context. So what are you apologizing for? This one slipped away from me. It's just so many issues with that scene.
There's a good outline, a good arc of many big themes in this short scene.
I thought it was really cool seeing Wednesday stand up for herself. I was bullied by a boy in elementary school that used to hit me and like beat me up. Seeing her stand up for herself and like kick their butts was satisfying. It was great to see a girl on a show being able to again be empowered and stand up for herself without needing rescuing.
Yeah, and then the father still belittles it. Like he doesn't, or the sheriff doesn't recognize it as like an empowered woman defending herself. This little thing did this, like sexism, all up the wazoo there, bias.
Yep.
I also think that when the pilgrims introduced themselves, not only did they open with like freak, you know, but they were also like, that's our booth. So they just picked out a reason to antagonize her for existing and just sitting in a booth that is like for anybody, right? It's not like a special booth for just them. So I want to go back to Mariella's point of like the principal being like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, come on, Wednesday, like, let's just move along.
I feel like it really highlights the way that people who are marginalized marginalized function in this universe, and just really Wednesday being so empowered and so confident in who she is that she is unwilling to tolerate that type of mistreatment. Everyone around her seems to be okay seeing the students of Nevermore and just people that are different in some way, as if they should be apologizing just for assisting. But Wednesday's like, no, I exist. I'm not going to apologize for assisting, and I'm going to take ownership of my space where I'm not going to allow you to mistreat me or to disrespect me. At the end of it all, it just really highlights the very contrasting attitudes between Wednesday and all the adults around her, and just how much space Wednesday takes and just demands of herself and of the world.
I agree. I also feel like Weems deserves some credit because I feel like she represents sort of an older generation that didn't grow up in as accepting of a society or culture. So she's kind of used to the othering. I think in order to survive, she's had to be apologetic. And like you were kind of saying, she masks, you know, she keeps to herself, keeps her students to herself. And that's literally what keeps people safe sometimes. Back in the 70s and 80s and like with the AIDS pandemic, people who are LGBTQ plus, they had to kind of hide themselves, and it was a really painful, hard time to just be who you were.
Holy guac, that is boom! That is so insightful. I 100% agree with that. And I guess it's that intergenerational gap that you also see, especially in the disability community, the way that you see older advocates having to assimilate and mask to be able to function in society is so different from this new generation of disability advocates. They're like, disabled is not a bad word. And it's just that change in perspective that is so prominently highlighted here. I love that point. That
yeah, I love that the generation now is like more proud and more loud and can be more themselves because of the change that has happened, like because of the older generations. Hold on, I just wanted to shout out because you said disability is not a bad word, so I just want to show off my sweatshirt.
If you are unwilling to tolerate the ignorance, bias, and ableism you see in the world, hit that like button and subscribe to Disability Clinic for more accessible and inclusive education. Until next time, thank you for watching, listening, and learning.